And so what value should we put on a public opinion poll commissioned by a taxpayer-funded lobby group called the Canadian Race Relations Foundation that commissioned a poll from a polling company owned by a Liberal Party activist named Bruce Anderson that asks Canadians if they're against hate? Here's that poll by the Liberal lobby group. Poll demonstrates support for strong social media regulations to prevent online hate and racism. Here's the press release. Recent events in the U.S. have caused Canadians to internally examine the rise of extremism and hate speech within the world of online platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. The findings of a poll conducted by the Canadian Race Relations Foundation and Abacus Data released today indicate that 93% of Canadians believe that online hate speech and racism are a problem, including 49% who believe online hate speech and racism are very serious problems. Look at that, eh? That first part. That Americans have made Canadians afraid of extremism. That's their starting point. That's called having your thumb on the scale. If you say that to someone before asking them a poll question, you've torqued it. If that's the predicate for asking Canadians about hatred. Abacus Data, as you can see, is a Liberal firm. Bruce Anderson, Liberal strategist, is its boss. His daughter is Kate Purchase, who was Justin Trudeau's longtime communications director. You can see his son-in-law, Perry Tsurgis, is on there, Liberal Party lobbyist. This is an inside job, of course. Seriously, I'm surprised that only 93% of Canadians say they don't like hate. I mean, who are those 7% who say, I like hate? I do. Who are those 7%? But if you read through the poll, you can see it's worse than that. The poll only asks about right-wing violence. Hang on, what about an entire year of left-wing violence from Antifa and Black Lives Matter just burning and shooting? How is it a legitimate survey to specifically only ask about right-wing violence when we've had a year of riots across America from the left? And they've started up again, by the way, in Portland, for example. Well, this is a Liberal polling company commissioned by a Liberal-funded NGO for a Liberal cabinet minister. Garbage in, garbage out. You'll learn nothing from people asking if they're against hate. Of course they are. You'll learn nothing from asking people if they're against violence. Of course they are. And once you've whipped them up with your narrative that we're in a crisis, if you ask them if they want the government to do something about it, well, of course they do. Or at least, of course, they say they do, especially if you don't tell them exactly what you're going to do. That report was given massive coverage in the mainstream media, and I didn't see one story that either mentioned that it's a Liberal firm that conducted the poll, or that the questions only focused on right-wing haters. Not surprisingly, Trudeau's censorship minister was thrilled with it. I should tell you, he appointed the president of the NGO that started this whole government-funded thing. And this was timed just coincidentally with another think tank, which means a government-funded Liberal front group called the Public Policy Forum. It came out with a deep-thinking policy paper calling for the censorship of hate too. Here's a story about it in the Globe and Mail. Heritage Minister says takedown rules coming, welcomes calls for new social media regulator. They're not calls, you paid them to say that. No one, it's like sending yourself flowers on Valentine's Day. You paid them to say that to you. Let me read. Canadian Heritage Minister Stephen Guilbeault says government rules are coming that will require social media companies to take down illegal or hateful content. On Wednesday, Mr. Guilbeault welcomed federally funded reports from the Public Policy Forum and the Canadian Race Relations Foundation that urge the government to act because they say internet giants like Google and Facebook are not doing enough to review and remove dangerous content on their platforms. Canadians are now asking their government to hold social media companies accountable for the content that appears on their platforms, Mr. Guilbeault said in a statement provided by his office. This is exactly what we intend to do by introducing new regulations that will require online platforms to remove illegal and hateful content before they cause more harm and damage. Here's my favorite part. The Public Policy Forum, an independent policy organization that received Canadian heritage funding to produce its report, called this week for the creation of a powerful federal regulator to oversee how platform companies moderate content on their sites. The forum also recommended creating an e-tribunal to which Canadians can bring concerns over individual social media posts. Don't you love that? An independent organization that was paid by Guilbeault. Well, don't be surprised. This story was published in the Globe and Mail, which is another independent organization that is funded by Trudeau, actually by Guilbeault. Here's my favorite part of the whole thing. Kara Zwiebel, director of the Canadian Civil Liberties Association's Fundamental Freedoms Program, said she is not opposed to an independent tribunal that resolves disputes over online content, but noted the government has not been clear exactly what it's proposing. If new rules go beyond existing legal definitions of hate speech or attempt to define misinformation, she said that will raise freedom of speech concerns. Yeah, I don't know. The devil really will be in the details, she said. Oh well. I'm nervous about the prospect of government deciding on what is true, probably just as nervous as I am about social media platforms deciding what is true. So I think we need to really be careful about regulation that tries to deal with the problem. But she started by saying she's open to it. The devil's in the details. She says there's some questions she wants answered. Okay, fair enough. But she is fine with the concept. She just wants to see the details on this, but she's not saying no. I don't know if you noticed that. And how about this thing, what's it called again? The Conservative Party. And what are they called again? The official opposition. Did they say anything conservative or did they oppose this? Well, let's go to the Globe. Conservative MP Alain Reyes said in an email that he appreciated the thoroughness of the PPF report and he's consulting with interested groups. We are waiting impatiently for the government to table a bill so that we can start working on this file, he said. The government needs to find the right balance between regulation and preserving freedom of expression, which is so important to our democracy. That's all you got. You're consulting with interested parties. Aren't all 37 million of us interested parties? You're not opposed to this. You're going to wait for the details too. You think maybe the balance right now is too far towards free speech, and so you're willing to balance it with more liberal censorship, and you're a conservative MP. All right. Here's how they're going to do it, if you're wondering. It's another item from a liberal-funded organ, the Toronto Star. Look at this from just yesterday. During an interview with the Star, Guilbeault also said that a new regulator will be set up to oversee the rules Ottawa is bringing in to curb the sharing of illegal content, including hate speech, child pornography, and non-consensual intimate images on platforms like those owned by Facebook and Google. Now, do you see the difference there? They're talking about child pornography and revenge porn, and they sneak in hate speech. And here's a CBC story, also funded by the Liberals, where they say it's about terrorist propaganda. That should include rules around hate speech, the letter said, as well as radicalization, incitement to violence, exploitation of children, or creation or distribution of terrorist propaganda. I think it's pretty clear. They're going to announce that they're going after terrorist speech and child pornography and criminal things, and who could be against that? I mean, you're not against that, are you? You're not pro-terrorist, are you? I already asked if you're pro-hate. You're not pro-terrorist now. And then they're just going to sneak in a little stowaway. What they're really after here, political censorship, because you know what? Terrorist propaganda is already illegal. If you say it, if you phone it, if you type it, if you internet it. Those laws were brought in after 9/11. You can't even give moral support to terrorist groups. You don't have to be a terrorist yourself, but merely supporting a terrorist group is a crime in our criminal code. Same with child pornography. We have had these online laws from the pre-social media era. The internet itself has been really popular for about 25 years. This is not new. The criminal code is already pretty much caught up. What's new is the political censorship. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.